Motion pictures, can't get enough. Cinephile, movie lover, and a big movie buff. Talking to actors, directors, innovators, athletes to writers, real trailblazers. Yeah, originator, not a duplicator. So honest, always authentic. Tune in, trust me, you don't want to miss it. This is the Monday Morning Critic. Amazing life journeys, great interviews from sports analysts, even reporters too. Captivating, always top content, bringing top quality. Everybody's talking. Yeah, originator, not a duplicator. So passionate and so authentic. Tune in, trust me, you don't want to miss it. This is the Monday Morning Critic. Woo!
Hey, yo, you ready? Let's do it.
My next guest was a 2004 inductee into the WWE Hall of Fame. He's won over 40 championships, including the NWA US Heavyweight Championship, the WWF Intercontinental Championship, the WWF Tag Team Championship. And if you're like me and you love wrestling and you grew up with wrestling, he is legitimately one of the founding fathers, one of the best wrestlers of all time, Greg the Hammer Valentine. Greg, my very first question to you is, your father is the legendary Johnny Valentine, for those who are listening for the first time, who was a phenomenal wrestler. Obviously, many consider him to be one of the, wrestlers at the height of the golden age of wrestling, per se. Did you feel pressure that, your dad was this successful, wonderful wrestler, and, you kind of also wanted to go in the same field, but is it pressure to have a dad that had that much success, was so highly regarded, and was essentially the face of wrestling?
Being a second-generation wrestler, and there was quite a few of us back then, like Bob Orton, just top of my head, it helped us later on because they realized that we inherited a lot of that talent. Things that can't be taught to you, you inherited from your father.
Right.
I used to watch my dad a lot. And so when I didn't imitate him, but I emulated him, and I learned, and him talking to me, telling me to look like a fighter and don't take a lot of bumps and stand in there. And so it was good. It was good learning from him, not hands-on, but just him talking to me and telling me. And he was crippled later on in a plane crash.
Yeah.
He couldn't wrestle anymore, so he used to watch a lot of my matches, and he tweaked a lot of them, and it really helped out.
Yeah, it's almost like, in that sense, Greg, it's almost like, outside of the fact he's your father and you think the world of him, it's almost like having a coach, right? He can, especially a guy with the level of talent your dad had, his input must have been beyond valuable.
Well, my dad was so tough, and I'd see him take punches and everything. So he was my idol. I wanted to be just like him. I wanted to be just as tough as he was. And I would be I had a lot of long matches in my career where I went 60 minutes a lot. And when I got down and out in the ring and I was blowed up or whatever, I would just think about him and how tough he was, and I'd say to myself, you're never going to be as tough as him. Get your ass off this canvas and fight back. I would talk to myself like that. And it made me tough. Just as tough. Well, I'd like to say I was just as tough as him, but I'm not going to say that. But I would feel like I was just as tough as him, especially all those long matches. And it was good to have a father figure like that I could look up to. So second generation wrestlers had an edge back then, you know?
Yeah. And for those of you listening, Greg's dad was paralyzed from a plane crash in 1975. The fact that he made it out alive, Greg, I would say is a miracle in itself.
Yeah.
You know?
It was. And he lived another 20 years, suffered in pain, tried to walk. But he was a great guy, and I'd go see him, and he'd tell jokes and talk about the road. And so second generation, being a second generation wrestler, it was fortunate for me. So I got to hear what it was like in the 50s and the 60s, and that's when wrestling, the golden era. They try to say that I'm from the golden era. No, that's the first golden era, was the 50s and 60s, and it was one of the most popular shows on television back then. Wrestling that's why it became so popular. It was one of the first shows on black and white television.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, and not to get cheesy or hokey, but I mean, your dad had to be super proud of you, Greg. I mean, you're right. There is gold. People talk about different golden ages. For me, anyway, it was certainly watching you guys. But he had to be super proud of the amount of success that you had.
Yes.
You know,
and a lot of it was timing. You know, timing is. I mean. I was in Mid-Atlantic with Flair's partner and doing really, really great. And all of a sudden, in 1979, George Scott, the booker for Jimmy Crockett in Mid-Atlantic, says, "I'm going to send you to New York." And I didn't want to go to New York. I wanted to stay where I was at. I was happy at the Mid-Atlantic, but, you know, it was a blessing in disguise. I went to New York. New York was on its ass. They couldn't even sell Madison Square Garden out anymore.
Yeah.
And you know what it was? It was the talent they had. The talent was not wrestling. They were just pulling hair, putting fingers in the eyes, and it was bullshit wrestling. And what Vince wanted to do is bring guys in that brought wrestling back to wrestling. And he had a great performer, Bob Backlund, but he needed someone to wrestle. And the very first time I went into New York, me and Bob Backlund wrestled a 1-hour draw in Madison Square Garden. That's really started out for me. And it brought wrestling back to New York. And instead of all that bullshit wrestling they had, this was where guys would grab holds and it looked really competitive. And that's how WWF became so huge. Not just because of me, but because he started bringing guys in that could wrestle.
Yeah, and Greg, you know, I have to say, and I was going to say this down a little bit later in the interview. I mean, I totally agree with you. I mean, but it is you. It's you. It's guys that were with you. You guys made people care about wrestling. It was great wrestling. And now I feel like, I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus or shit on anybody, but I watch the WWE today. I don't know what it suffers from. I feel like you have a lot of athletes, but nobody cares. Like, I feel like wrestling today, where you guys, your strong point, Greg, was you made people care. It was good wrestling. Is people would go out of their way to make sure they watched you guys. Today, it's like I watch it. I can't stomach 5 minutes of it. It's you don't care enough about the wrestlers. Am I being negative, or is that kind of the perception with a lot of...
No, you're not being negative. If these guys would learn how to wrestle, if these guys would take a page out of our book and watch the 80s wrestling and even the 70s, they need to look back. Sometimes you need to look back and see how you got to where you're at. They have gone so far on the other side of the limb that it's not believable anymore. The whole thing is slow it down and make it believable. That's people, even though they think, because back in my day they go, that match was bullshit, but this match is for real. You got to at least give them a 1 match a night or 2 match a night on the card that they can believe in, because they want to believe in it. They don't want to go watch something that's predetermined. They don't want to think about that. It's just like going and watching a good movie. You go in there and for 2 hours you're watching this movie and you're not thinking about anything. You're not thinking about paying the water bill. You're not thinking about a girlfriend. You're thinking about watching that movie. You're so engrossed. That's the way wrestling needs to come back to. I know WrestleMania, they put on great shows for WrestleMania. They need to do that all the time. Make the people believe in it. And you know what? If the wrestlers believe in what they're doing out there, rather than running around goofy and I don't know what they're doing, if they believe in what they're doing, it'll pass on to the crowd and the people up there in the cheap seats. They're all going to believe what they're seeing. So that's my take on it, and it's the right way.
No, that's well said, and I didn't want to, get off. This is my last question about Dad. You ended up traveling Texas, I think, for 3 months with your father. How much did you learn, before you went to Calgary, how much did you learn in that 3 months, Greg? I know you learned a lot from him, but were those 3 months valuable in your part of becoming a wrestler?
Yeah, my dad was always in the main event, so he was either the second to last match or the last. So I would watch all the matches before that. Some good, some bad, but most of them, they weren't what the main event was going to be. I'd watch Johnny Valentine come out against Chief Wally McDaniel or Fritz Von Erich or No Masters. I mean, my dad, the matches, I knew there was a difference. I'm watching these guys on the underneath preliminary matches, and I'm not even watching it because it's so boring.
Right.
My dad would come out, and I could see how the people reacted too. They go, "Oh, this is the main event. This is the real McCoy. This was the real thing." And then when they started hitting each other, and Wahoo would smash, get my father all over the chest, so his chest started bleeding, and then my dad would beat the hell out of Wahoo. That's wrestling, and that's what they came to see.
Yeah.
And like I said, I remembered that, and it was what an education was for me. That 3 months that I got to sit ringside and watch this spectacle, and it was just great. The matches before that, some were so, but I saw the difference. So when I wrestled, I said, I'm going to be like that. They're gonna say, well, I don't know about that, all the matches, but the one Greg Valentine was in, that was a real match.
Yeah.
Or it was a good match.
That's well said. We're going to talk a little bit about this, but 350 days, absolutely loved it. You had a quote about yourself, which I thought was absolutely perfect. If anybody wants to know about Greg Valentine, the wrestler, you said lots of guys had gimmicks. Your gimmick was that you had no gimmick. You were just a wrestler. That, Greg, is perfect. I mean, guys like you, obviously, how I think about you. You know what I think about you, but it's a lost art what you brought. I feel like it's almost, I don't want to say a past time, but goddamn, Greg, were you good?
Well, yes.
And I think that's the problem. And I think that's the problem today, Greg, is it's too dependent in some ways on just gimmicks. Gimmick here, gimmick there, where the wrestling is just gone. It's not there anymore.
Yeah, and that's when I started leaving when I left the WWF in '94. That's one of the reasons I left, because it wasn't about wrestling anymore. It was who had the best gimmick and all this crap. And even though I wanted to keep wrestling, I went somewhere else. I went independent so I could be what I wanted to be and not have to worry about having a gimmick, because the closest thing I came to having a gimmick was when I was with Honky Tonk on the Rhythm and Blues. I did that out of complete boredom, and also I was at the end of my run. I've been in WWF for 20 plus years, and I knew my time was going to come where I would have to leave. I didn't want to, but I could see the business changing, So when I did the rhythm and blues thing, it was a departure for me, but it was fun because, you know what? I didn't give a shit no more.
Right.
I didn't care if they believed it anymore. I'm going to go out there and act like I'm going to play a guitar, and I'm going to have my hair black, and I'm going to have fun. And I had fun with it. I had so much fun with it that I believe rhythm and blues, if they would have put the belts on us, I think we would have drew some serious money. But no, they brought in and signed the Road Warriors, and they split us up. And then I came back.
Yeah,
Came back in for a while with the blonde hair, but it wasn't never the same.
Who was a bigger pain in the ass? Was it Jimmy Hart or Jesse Ventura trying to get you to dye your hair black?
It was both of them, but it was Jimmy. Jesse Ventura was up there doing the broadcasting with Vince, and me and Honky were already called Rhythm and Blues, and I still had the blonde hair, but I really hadn't changed my gimmick. I had the rolls and everything. And we were a good tag team, and we were in WrestleMania 4 against WrestleMania 5. I think it was WrestleMania 5, yeah. Against the Hart Foundation. I still had blonde hair then. So that was really Jesse's idea. He was up there in an announcing box, and he goes, Vince, what do you think about Valentine coming out with black hair? And, he was thinking about, the shock value. You know what? It worked. It was a shock. My wife was pissed off about it. I was pissed when I went out on the beach and the black hair was dripping on my chest, black hair dye. So, but it took them a year to talk me into doing it. And Jimmy Hart carried that bottle of black dye around with him. And so in Phoenix, Arizona, of all places, just before we went on to TV, we dyed my hair black. I really didn't have the gimmick together. I didn't have the white jacket and all that stuff, or the sunglasses, the Elvis glasses. But when I saw myself on TV after I got back home, I go, oh my God, I look like a big Indian.
and Greg, there's so much that's changed. I mean, I don't know, wrestling seemed like so I don't want to say so much better, but so much more genuine when it had territories. You mentioned that territories earlier. And I mean, even the idea of managers like Grand Wizard, Luscious Johnny, Captain Lou. I mean, managers today, they exist, but I feel like it's a thing that has passed. But those guys and the way you guys worked, I don't know, man. I just feel like so much has changed, that the product has changed a little bit. I mean, can it be revived, Greg? A lot of this stuff that was in the past, bringing it back, can wrestling, I don't want to say be saved, I don't think it's that bad, but can it be back to where it was when you guys were wrestling?
Yeah, you can re-educate these people real quick. And I like the manager era. I loved every one of my managers. Grand Wizard, Captain Albano, Johnny Valiant, Jimmy Hart. I loved every one of them, and I think they just added spice to you coming out. And say Captain Albano, he would have me in, but he'd have a few other guys too. But I thought it was a good thing. And now they got one left, Paul Heyman. And actually, he's in a good spot because he's with that big beast, Brock Lesnar.
Yeah.
I don't know if Brock can talk for himself or not. But he doesn't need to when he's got Paul Heyman. And he's a great wrestler and he's a legitimate tough guy. But, there's not, the guys really don't do the interviews like they used to. They talk in the ring. It's all different. They don't talk about the matches where I'm going to get my title back from you. I mean, it's not like it was in our era. So it doesn't mean as much. And those interviews in the ring, I would knock that off unless it's just a special occasion where you're signing a big title match and you come out there and put the fold-up table out there and some chairs and sign it. Make it a special thing. But now it's every darn time I turn the TV on, they're out there talking, and I hate that.
Yeah. That's so well said. And even if they're not talking in the ring, I mean, I almost feel like the announcers, when they do the match, they're taking away from the match because they're trying to make it about themselves and not the wrestlers. I mean, when you had Gorilla Monsoon or Jesse doing a match, they were characters, but they were characters that pushed the wrestlers over. I feel like the announcers today are about their own agenda, and they're forgetting why they're there. I mean, it's selfish stuff, Greg. I mean, maybe I'm way off. I don't know, but I feel like it's pretty selfish, some of the announcing I hear today.
Yeah, there's three. I watched it the other night. There's three guys out there, and I don't know any of them, but I don't watch them much. But I remember Jim Ross. I like Jim Ross. I like Mean Gene Okerlund. God bless him. Mm-hmm. These were, and Gorilla Monsoon. Oh my God, these were guys, and Bobby Heenan. These were guys that had their own personality, but they would put the guy over that's in the ring. Like, they would talk about me. I mean, Monsoon would say, well, you know, the Hammer, it takes him 10 minutes to warm up, but then he gets really going. I mean, they personalized everything. And it wasn't really, you know, Jesse would always stick up to the bad guy against Vince, and Vince would be the babyface announcer, but Vince was a great announcer too. Those were the great days, and they knew how to get that talent over just by talking about it. And now it's a whole different thing. I don't even know the guys are out there, except Booker T. That's the only one I know. Yeah,
right. And yeah, you mentioned Bobby Heenan. I tell you, if we took all the characters of all time in wrestling, you know, not so much wrestlers, but just characters, whether it's managers, announcers, wrestling, put them all together, he might be in the top 10. I mean, he was amazing.
Yeah.
You know, so.
And Monsoon, the way Monsoon talked, he was a great wrestler during his time, but he was one of those big, huge guys. But when he became an announcer, God, he was fabulous. And Monsoon and Heenan, as a tag team on that mic, they were the greatest.
Yeah, I totally agree. Not to go too far back, but Greg, how much did you take away from training with the Funks, Stu Hart, and even Inoki? I mean, you trained with him as well. Talk about that. How beneficial was that for you in your career, Greg?
Okay, Stu Hart was great because Stu Hart didn't teach me a bunch of corny stuff. He taught me how to lock up. He taught me how to take a few bumps in his basement there, and he called it the dungeon, but it was good. He showed me holds. He didn't show me goofy high spots. I never did high spots that much anyway. So I learned from the ground up with him. And then you mentioned Inoki, right?
Yeah.
I went to Japan in 1975. He saw me wrestling up at Olympic Auditorium. They stopped on their way to Tokyo and watched me and asked me if I'd be interested. They liked the way I laid my punches in. They liked the way I was convincing in the ring. And that's what they've always loved in Japan. You go over there and watch Japan wrestling, those guys are beating the crap out of each other. And so I worked for Nokia a lot in the 70s, in the 80s, and I loved working over there with him. And back in the days of Los Angeles at the beginning, I'm working against John Tolis, who taught me a lot. And working in Olympic Auditorium was great because it was what an institution that was. They used it for a lot of fighting movies and stuff. It was just a perfect auditorium for wrestling, and I learned so much in Los Angeles too.
Yeah, and you know, I have to say, and I'm not going out on a wire by this, but the best pro wrestling in 2019 might be in Japan.
Well, yeah, I catch it on TV every once in a while. I don't know what time it comes. I live in Las Vegas here.
Right.
It comes up, and whenever I tune it in, I think Jim Ross does some of the announcing, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I think he does.
Yeah.
But anyway, I watched one the other night where he was announcing, and yeah, these guys go all out, and they make it look real. And believe me, to make it look real, it's got to be pretty damn close to being 99% real, like it was back in the 80s. Because these guys are hurting each other, but it's all, they're not thinking about themselves, they're thinking about the crowd and thinking about making it believable, and they're enjoying what they're doing, making it look believable. Yeah, I love Japan, Japanese style wrestling. It's great.
Yeah, and I just want to throw a few names here. I know you've been asked 1,000 times, but you and Flair were such an underrated tag team. You guys were champions, I realize that, but boy, you guys made for a great tag team. The two of you, that had to be a lot of fun for you in your career, Greg.
Well, we both had the blonde hair. We both had the nice robes. We loved the business. We loved wrestling. When me and Flair first tagged up, they put us against the Anderson brothers, and we did 60-minute matches all the time. But it was, the Anderson brothers just beat the crap out of us for 60 minutes. But they taught us basically how to be tough. And when I broke off in the singles, Wahoo and Daniel taught me how to be tough. So all these such great Flair and me against Steamboat and Youngblood. Matches that you couldn't even duplicate nowadays. And unless you actually put me and Flair back in the ring together now. But, those are the great days.
No, and Greg, when I think of tough wrestlers, man, I tell you, you're atop of that list without question. Let me ask you a question, and this is probably naive, and you certainly would understand this more than I would. What's the difference between good, hard wrestling and somebody being completely stiff? Like somebody just to the point where it's like, well, what the fuck are you doing? Like, where is that line, and how do you treat that? As when you were in the ring, how did you treat that? Were you stiff back? Were you in the locker room, kind of saying, what the hell's your problem? Like, how do you treat, stiff?
Yeah, well, I've had to do that. A lot of guys got nervous, but most of the guys that wrestled me knew that they were going to get hit when I hit them, and sometimes I'd have to ask them to fight back. But sometimes, a couple times, I remember guys. I can't even remember this one guy's name, but he hit me like 4 times as hard as he could right in my face because he got mad. I took him down, front face locked him, and I stretched him, choked him out because I couldn't just sit there and throw haymakers back and forth. So I took him down. Flair was my partner, and he was laughing. I hooked that guy, and I took him down. I can't remember his name. I think he passed away, though. God, what was his name? But anyway, I stretched him, and I wrenched his neck. And then I let him go, and there was no more of that. But the difference is between stiff and trying to hurt somebody and just knowing what the hell you're doing and getting mad, that's wrong. But there was a guy that I wrestled quite a few times. He was stiff, and he didn't know what the hell he was doing, and that was the Ultimate Warrior. But I worked around him, and I could have a good match because he'd be running back and forth, and I'd just stand there and watch him run back and forth. So I'm going to let this guy blow himself up because I don't care how tough you are. I don't care how many muscles you got and how many times you lift weights every day. You come out there and run to the ring and run around, you're going to get friggin' tired. And I'd wait for him to get tired, and then I'd go in and grab a hold on him. But Warrior was a good guy, though.
Yeah,
I liked the Warrior. But he didn't know how to work. He learned eventually some of it, and I got to know him. I went to Europe with him after we both quit the WWF, and we went over there and headlined. It was me, Jake the Snake, Hercules, and the Warrior. And we went over there and went all over Germany and Austria and all over Europe, and I really got to know the guy. He was a good guy.
Right.
He didn't really love the business like I did, but yeah, there's a lot of guys that's the difference between stiff and there's dangerous.
Right. And I'm glad you said that about Ultimate Warrior. I had heard that he's a good guy, but you make a great point. I mean, he runs a marathon before he goes into the wrestling match, so it's like there's no question that he's going to be sloppy in the ring when he gets in. I mean, he's already been, like you said, he blew himself up running to the ring and running around and, the ropes, and by the time he gets there, he's gassed.
Yeah, he was gassed, and I would just let him do that thing, and then it's okay, now we can wrestle if you got all that doing.
And you mentioned another guy, and I watched one of his interviews, Greg. He was on another podcast called Joe Rogan, and that is Jake the Snake, and I know he's overcome some demons. He tells some stories, and I'm not implying anything. I don't know Jake. I know he went through some tough things. Is he a storyteller, or has he actually gone through like a lot of what he's been through in his life? I mean, it's tough to say, like, it's tough to tell whether he's, like a storyteller or the guy's really just reflecting on his life. Yeah,
Jake has had a lot of demons, and he's all straightened out now, but, he was a great performer.
Mm-hmm.
He is second generation, just like I was.
Right.
He went through a lot of trials and tribulations, but the guy back in his heyday, he was really good.
Yeah.
And he didn't do all that goofy crap either,
Right.
And he was solid. A couple times I would wrestle Jake. I said, Jesus, he knew I was stiff, and he would be stiff with me. But he was never dangerous stiff. And
right.
Jake was a hell of a card.
Yeah, and another one of the guys I know you think the world of. Your match in 1983 in Starrcade, you could argue, is one of the top 5 matches of all time. And I know it was very, very painful for you, and that's Piper. He's another guy, Greg, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, where he is so universally respected. And when people, obviously when anybody dies, people are sad, but when he passed, I felt like people really felt like they lost a good friend, a brother,
Well, I knew I lost a good friend, and I was just with him in Detroit. We just did the Motor City Comic Con. We were there for 3 days together, and then he asked me if I would like to be on his podcast that he did from California. I said, yeah, man, that'd be great. So about a week later, he had like a live audience for his podcast, too, and I can't remember who his guy was running the show, but Piper was, we reminisced about everything, and you could hear the crowd in the background, and so it was a great podcast. And then 2 days later, I'm at the Charlotte, North Carolina convention for wrestling, and I heard that he passed away, and I was sick. I couldn't even go down. I had to take a day off. I was there for 3 days doing autographs because of a big fan fest. The first day I couldn't even go down because I was so upset. And a lot of things have upset me in my life, but this really took its toll because I had so much history with him. And then I just spent those 3 days with him, and then did the podcast with him, and then he passed, and oh my God, it was awful.
Yeah, man, I know. I mean, I know how close you guys were. I can't even imagine what you went through. What a good wrestler, but even more importantly, what a good human being.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah, and I know you
was the best.
Yep, and I know you were close with some other guys, Dusty Rhodes, who passed. I know you're very good friends with Tito, who's still with us, and Bob Backlund, who's still with us. And there's a lot of good guys that you were very, very close with, Craig.
Yeah, I've always loved Bob Backlund, Tito Santana, Ronnie Garvin, all these guys. We have mutual respect for each other. Tito was a great natural talent, and he always puts me over big time about me teaching him the ropes and all those. We wrestled each other off and on for 3 years over the Intercontinental belt.
That's right.
And then there's another guy, Ricky Steamboat, another great guy. And so just some great experiences with those guys.
Yeah, and you mentioned this earlier about Comic-Cons. How do you like doing those, Greg? Do you like interacting with the fans? Does it ever get old when they tell you how much you mean to them? That's got to still be a pretty important part of it for you.
Well, you know what? You do a long flight, and you fly out to wherever, and you get off the plane, you go to the hotel, and you rest up. The next morning, you're at these Comic-Cons, and it's not just wrestlers, it's all movie stars and everything. Baseball players, you name it, but all these fans, they come up to you. They make you feel good because they say, "God, we love." I mean, they take away a little bit from what they see now. They go, "We don't like it like you guys. You guys are the best." But these people are not just saying that; they're sincere.
No, absolutely.
And they turn up to get our autograph because they love and respect us so much, and it makes us feel good. You know, it makes me feel good and keeps me relevant and keeps me connected to the great wrestling fans out there.
Yeah, that's well said, man. And people really do love you. And I got to say, you mentioned rhythm and blues earlier. I have to say, does it ever get old seeing that, knowing that you have an action figure? I mean, one of your action figures is one of the most rare action figures on the planet. But are you? It sounds like such a cheesy and such a weird question, but does it ever get? Is it kind of neat having your own action figure? That's a pretty kind of neat thing to have.
When they first came out with the action figures in 1985, LGN. It was fabulous, go to all these different stores like Sears and Walmart and whatever they had back then, and you see yourself on the shelves. It was mind blowing. I'm used to it now, but whenever they come out with a new action figure or DVD, it's especially the action figures. It's great. It's a compliment. Not just about making the money off the thing, but it's a compliment.
Sure.
To your career.
Yeah, and the one that I'm talking about was, I think it was when you were with Rhythm and Blues. It was not released, and somebody else owned it, another wrestler. I can't remember who, but I think they valued it at like $60,000 or $70,000. It's off the charts, Greg.
Yeah, the thing is still on sale. This guy's got, I don't know who's got it. I heard it was some wrestler, but then I heard it was somebody in England, but it's like they want $60,000 for it. I mean, it's ridiculous, but he put it out there. I think there's only one. I just told the guys, just mail it to me. I'll sell it for
you. The other thing I wanted to run by you, and I know you've seen these because on occasion you'll do indie shows. I have a friend that was in the WWE for a while. Now he does some coaching there. So he's definitely capable. He wrestles indie shows. But I got to say, Greg, I probably watch 90% of these wrestlers at indie shows. And somebody's going to get killed because I feel like a lot of these guys at indie shows, and I'm not, and girls, I'm not trying to be, not throw shit on anybody, but I just feel like they don't know what they're doing, and they're getting into a ring where, you spent your whole life training for this. A lot of these people spent, a month or...
I've done some of those independent shows and watched those guys, and what they do is they just take their money, they train them, and then they throw them in the ring. These guys will eventually get hurt because they don't know what the hell they're doing. And they only wrestle like once or twice a month. But then they go to the gym, but you can't. There's only so much you can learn in the gym. You got to learn it actually wrestling in front of a crowd, and then they get excited and they get nervous and they don't know what to do, and that's how they're going to get hurt. And like you said, they're going to get hurt. It's an accident looking for a place to happen. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, and I gotta say, we're the floor on the outside of the ring. It's hardwood floor. There's no mats. These guys are
no mats. Exactly. They don't. These promoters are so cheap. They don't want to pay the talent anything, and they want. Of course, they're going to make money from the school. They sell these things to colleges and stuff. Hey, I'll bring wrestling here. But the colleges, and that's, they make money for their athletic club. But the promoter's making money for bringing these guys. But he ain't paying these guys hardly anything. And they would probably wrestle for free anyway, just to get into the ring. But they're all going to get hurt. It's a sad thing, but when they killed off all the territories and WWF took over everything, there's no learning ground for all these people. I mean, we could go to different territories and learn stuff before we went to the big time. Now the only place you can learn stuff is this stupid independent shows.
Yeah, no, that's well said. And before I get into 350 days, and by the way, you are, when I say phenomenal in that, I don't know why you don't have your own documentary or like reality show. And I don't mean in people watch Ozzy Osbourne because he's a train wreck. But I'm saying you and your stories were so funny and classy. Like, I don't know, man, but I'm going to get to that in a second. I wanted to ask you, you told a story once about Darren Aronofsky, who is the director of The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke. I feel like Mickey, and I know you helped him, but I feel like the way he dressed and looked was absolutely a tribute to you. Am I way off with that?
Well, you could be right. I don't know that for sure, but I went down to Miami. I'd already met Aronofsky up in New York, up in Brooklyn, at his studio. But he invited me to come down to Miami and meet Mickey Rourke. That's where Mickey was living. So I flew down there, and we actually, I forget it was one of those hotels that were right there on South Beach. And we had a little enclosure there by the pool, and I talked to Mickey for probably an hour or two, and I gave him some of my DVDs, and these weren't jabroni DVDs. These were from WWF. They were good prints.
Yeah,
where they could see the DVDs that you could actually see some of my better matches, and I gave those to him, and he did watch them because he told me I saw him in Houston at WrestleMania, and he thanked me for letting me watch those videos. But he had the long blonde hair. He had kind of a lot of people said he looked like he was emulating you for the movie.
That's what I thought.
And I never did flying head scissors and that sort of thing. But yeah, Mickey Rourke did take a lot from those DVDs that I gave to him.
So yeah, let's talk about 350 Days because it's honest, it's brilliant, and it doesn't pull punches. It doesn't pretend to be something it's not. It's just, here is wrestling and deal with it. And I got to say, a lot of those, we mentioned those indie wrestlers, this should be mandatory viewing for anybody who wants to be a wrestler or anybody who appreciates the history of wrestling because, my God, Greg, what is... First of all, let me ask you about Fulvio Cesare. Boy, did he do a good job directing this, huh?
Fulvio, yes. It was great. And the guy there were several guys, I don't know all their names, that pieced this thing together. And it all came together just perfectly. And all the talent that they had talking on there, and it starts out with me driving the car, this 77 Cadillac. It shows me driving the car because this is what it was about. It wasn't about flying all over the place. It was about driving 300 miles to a wrestling show and then driving it back. And it shows me driving this Cadillac at the beginning. And we all drove Cadillacs or Lincolns back in the day. And that's what it was about. We got on airplanes too back then, but as soon as we landed, we go get in a rental car and drive another 100, 200 miles. So it was about that driving and about hardly any days off. And then you drive back to your home and see your wife. My wife Julie remembers all that stuff, and it was. In fact, I took her on the road with me, showed her what we went through. So it was. That's what that's about. 350 days on the road.
Yeah, and I don't know how much I could say or not say, because you tell 4 stories in that I want to say one of them, I was laughing so hard I thought I had to get medevaced to a hospital, and that's the one about the John Lennon biography you're talking about, and you and Flair in the hotel. That's not too bad when the Beatles had a...
Yeah, I remember that.
And then you tell a story about, you and Piper in the 80s. You tell a great story about you and Rick on the road with 4 cases of beer. You tell a great story about Andre and an $800 phone. That's what I'm saying, Greg. Like, you stole the show for me in this movie.
Well, thank you. It came off the top, but I mean, it was the real deal. And it was just big memories from being around Rick, being around Piper, being around all these guys. It was just like I said, I wasn't a gimmick wrestler. I had no gimmick. It was all great.
Yeah, and I just have a few more questions. Two of the other guys that I really enjoyed watching outside of what you did was Ted DiBiase and George. I'll use the wrestling names. Ted DiBiase and George Steele. I thought, they were so much fun to just listen to, just talk. The honesty that they came with, Greg, it was amazing.
I loved Ted DiBiase and I loved George Animal Steele. George was so honest. He became an agent later on, but he was a great guy, and he was so funny. And I'm sorry he passed away. And I saw him about 6 months just before he passed away. And he goes, Greg, I'm not going to be around much longer. He's telling me this up at an 80s convention in Providence, Rhode Island. He's telling me he's not going to be around that much longer.
Ugh.
And I'm looking at him like, oh, my God, don't say that. You'll be around forever. And sure enough, he passed away not too long after that. So me and Gene Okerlund was such a great guy and personal friend.
Yeah, it's ironic, Greg, because a lot of these guys whose character in the ring was off, like these just awful guys, but in reality, they're maybe some of the nicest people on the planet.
Right. Exactly.
My last question for you, Greg, and you've been so kind giving me all this time, was, J.J. Dillon talks about, I think it was J.J. Dillon, talks about, some of the stuff that fans did getting shot at. I mean, you talk, I think, about people following you to your car after matches. Did it ever surprise you how far fans would go?
Well, I guess when I first went to Carolinas and Ric Flair would tell everybody that we're driving this Eldorado Cadillac, so he'd more or less tell these people, come on, come get us. We're driving big Cadillacs, we got a lot of money. And I go, man, that got heat and everything, but you know what? They were waiting for you when the cars come pulling out and they throw rocks and bottles and all that kind of stuff. But, it was back when they believed it. They hated us. They came to see us get beat. But they loved saying they hated us. They loved to hate us. That was the deal.
Yeah, man, there's so much. What makes 350 Days so special is the history behind it. And it's one of the things that makes you very special, too, man. The history behind it, what you've done for us fans. I mean, I love your work. I mean, when I, growing up watching you were my idol, and you still are. You're a super guy, and I can't thank you enough, Greg, for coming on the show tonight. He is Greg the Hammer Valentine. Greg, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, buddy. You're 100% welcome. Thank you.